Okay. Uh, from the wood that they cut down, this is white oak. There was a couple of pieces that I had grabbed and brought back up from the lake. When people start turning crotches and things like that, they've usually got it already cut up and it's ready to go, and they're sticking it on the lathe. But if we back up one step before that, we've got something like these two pieces. How do I attack it? What are some different ideas on it? Now, I've got some ideas on this one, and this is kind of a burl. Uh, this is the back side of that one. Uh, this is actually the bottom of both of those pieces. But let's see, wait a minute. Let me go back to the beginning. Okay, this one here, I'm thinking you would probably want to cut here, and you've got a Y here that you can turn. But here we've got a 3 or 4 piece. How I'd like to see if we've got some ideas on how people might attack that. Uh, and then also, this is kind of a burrow. I've got some ideas there, but I'm looking for any kind of feedback from anybody on that. Uh,
To
so
go about these. I mean, there's a lot of choices on these,
How
Gary.
to dissect? How to dissect? So, any of the tree connoisseurs out there that are into cutting up, that are familiar with cutting up pieces like this, we would love to hear from you.
I've uh I've cut up a piece of white oak that was like the one on the left. And if you go to the next slide where you have the face of it, that one. Okay, you see that little split on the left end there? I can almost guarantee there's a void between that little
Yep.
slit and the ball on the backside, the burl ball. That that is most likely a void on the other side of that. So I would be very, very cautious with that. And you'd probably want the bark side to be the bottom side because it's almost guaranteed it's hollow under there.
That's not a burl.
That's the cutoff
That's a wound
where a limb was
scar.
cut
right,
off.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I realize that, but even a burl, how do you throw it out? Even ideas on
But
how you start these things.
Say it was a
I,
burl
I,
and
I
it
would,
was shaped like that.
if it was a burl, I would put a faceplate about 2 inches to the right of where that split is. I would
Hmm.
put the faceplate right into that flat spot right there, and
Yeah.
that's how I'd start. And I would turn a tenon or something on the backside when I find some wood, but that's how I would start it.
Okay,
For
yeah,
me,
because this is a
if it was a burl, I would cut that thing in half and I would hollow them out
cut it in half lengthwise or crosswise.
crosswise right there. I'd cut it right down the center and turn it in grain.
Okay, and I'm doing this hopefully for others to learn also ideas. So
Right.
yeah, this was a branch, and so it probably is hollow underneath it. But what are things to consider? That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, there's many options. You could even cut it you know, um, vertically
So
and do the
Yeah, a
same.
lot depends. A lot depends on what you're comfortable with and what you want out of this.
so
So if you did it the other way, if you said, okay, go back to the previous slide so you can see the outside of it, and let's say, oh, not that one, that one. So let's say you wanted to make it. You wanted that. We're talking about the piece on the left now.
Yeah.
If you wanted a natural edge piece and you wanted that bark on the edges of the piece, okay, then you would have to form a tenon on the backside so you could hold it, so you could carve it out. So one of the things that I would do is I would tend to put it on the bandsaw or use a chainsaw and lop off the bigger chunks of it, like that big branch sticking straight up because it would be in the way. And then I would orient it between centers, and I would want a flat spot to put like a spur center or something on the backside, and I would want to orient it between centers and orient it. Somebody was talking about orienting things a couple different ways. Oh, that was the meeting this weekend. Never mind. But I would want to make sure I would want it between centers so I could figure out where my best angle was. And once I had it between centers correctly, then I would put a tenon on it and go from there.
Yeah,
But
if you're,
one of the options is to try and put a natural edge on the in that section there, kind of at an angle into the table from here. Like move your mouse down a little bit and to the left, up a little bit, and now over to the right a little bit. And that's about where I would put the center of the bowl, or maybe a little lower. So that would be one center, and then angle it at like 45 degrees into the table and put the other center so that I could get a natural edge piece in that section of it.
yeah,
If you're,
So that's
this particular piece, this is kind of punky anymore and is a little bit up here. So we're talking theory probably more than actual on this piece of wood.
I would turn it just
Yep.
like I do it just like Matt says, center on that former limb, and then I would center on the backside on that former limb and create a small bowl or vessel out of that section, either with a natural edge or some kind of covered top.
I think
if
that,
you're,
and I wouldn't
you're-
want to mess with those big bits sticking out. I'd probably take a chainsaw to them.
right. Yeah,
and if you're turning that natural edge, if you're going to start that on center, I would recommend drilling. Use a 1 1/4 inch Forstner bit and drill about an inch deep so that your drive center gets in there. And if things work loose, that it's still going to catch on the lip because it's sunk in.
Right.
So if
Yeah,
something breaks
yeah,
loose, you're not going to lose the piece off the lathe.
good idea.
Yeah, you want your centers in wood, not on bark or edges
Yeah,
and rotted
absolutely.
stuff. Yeah, exactly.
And then Gary too, you'll find if you drill in where you got your cursor, you'll find the hollows. If there is a hollow spot or a void between the bark and the limb cap, and that's what that's called, is a limb cap, you will find that when you drill in there, and you'll avoid that possibility of it flying off.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. That's exactly right. Yeah. Good ideas. What do people do? Do they ever turn many more than a Y? Like this is about a 3 or a 4 branch. Are those very often ever done, or is that normally just kind of trash?
Not many people do those because of the complexity of them. But what you do is you treat it like you would a root burl. Okay. You just look at it and find a good place in the middle where you could get a center into it. Again, you're putting it between centers to try and turn it, but you could make a vessel out of it, or and you can certainly take an angle grinder, or as was suggested, take a drill and drill it through the bark to find a place for your center once you figure out how you want to orient it.
Oh, let's see. Okay, this is the multi-end here.
Yeah, so I mean, you want to get it squared away so that you could get it between centers so that you can turn it so you can hold it.
So
holding these things is critical.
Maybe something like here and then here, but then trim, not turn, but trim some of that big stuff off first.
Yeah, and you could do it with a chainsaw. I mean, you'd take a chainsaw to shape it a little closer, and then maybe take an angle grinder or a bandsaw and cut off the bigger pieces so that you don't have to turn them off, because that's a pain.
Right.
But yeah, you're always thinking about how you want to orient it so that you can hold it. And that's, eventually you want to hold it, whether you're turning a vessel or a bowl or something else, a medallion even, you just have to try and figure out how to hold it. So, yep.
See, that's them coming from the other direction again too. So
Then
yeah, but realistically,
and always remember, starting it between centers is always going to allow you to be able to rotate or change based upon the grain that gets exposed as you're turning it away also.
Yeah. Okay, well, I just thought that we don't normally discuss this very often, and I thought it would be a good
Right.
education, and I'm sure there probably are others' education also on how we attack this stuff.
Yep. And if you haven't done it, you should try, because one of the great ways to learn how to do this, is to do it yourself and find out what works and what doesn't. So,
And the cool thing is, if you screw up, wood grows on trees. You can get more.
yeah.
Fact.
Beat me to it.
Not this tree
I was
anymore.
waiting for that comment. My night's complete. My night's complete.
Okay. Well, thank you very
Got a
much.
lot of options there.
I appreciate the comments, and hopefully some other people had to learn something too.